Welcome to the last segment of Citizens Forum, being filmed on Tuesday, April the 28th in the Memorial Arena. I'd like to thank our volunteer crew and the Shaw staff again. That makes it all happen. Our guest in this segment is Adam Olsen. Adam, you are welcome.
Thank you.
You're the interim leader of the Green Party of BC.
Yeah.
I think it would be a great honor to have such a role. How does it feel?
It's been a really amazing experience. I got appointed by the Provincial Council back in August of 2013 after our previous leader, Jane Sturck, resigned from the position after the last election. And it's been a really amazing experience for me. You know, I ran in Saanich North in the Islands. That was an incredible amount of growth for me and the opportunity that presented. And then when the party came and asked me if I wanted to be the interim leader, that was a huge honor. And the opportunity to stay involved in British Columbia politics and work alongside Andrew Weaver and the great team that we have both in the legislature and in our staff has been a real highlight of my life so far. And you know, I look forward to building towards the next general election in 2017.
So next provincial election, 2017.
Yeah.
So this I'm going to just shout out a few stats here provided by Fair Vote Canada, okay, and then I'll ask you a question. In the last 30 years, the Canadian Greens have elected in Canada 2 people at the provincial or federal level. So in the last 30 years, the Canadian Greens have elected 2 people. In the USA, and this is with our first past the post voting system. In the USA, with the same voting system, the Greens have elected nobody, I think, to the Congress or the presidency. Mm-hmm. In Britain, the Greens have elected 1 seat in the last 30 years. And in Austria, which has proportional representation, they've elected 136 people. Mm-hmm. And in Germany, which has proportional representation, they've elected, I think, 413 people. Mm-hmm. So is changing our voting system to a proportional system important for the Green Party?
One of our founding principles, Jack, is participatory democracy. And I think that it's really important that British Columbians and Canadians have a system to elect their representatives in our democracy that is fair and that is just, and that reflects that the number of seats for any party reflects the amount of popular vote that they receive during that election. And I think it's pretty clear that in Canada and in the province of British Columbia, we don't get that from our elections. I think it discourages people from participating in our democracy. And I think that our democracy is significantly weakened because of the first past the post system. So just one correction, I think there's been 3 Greens elected in the first past the post. The leader of the New Brunswick Party is the most recent. I believe his name's David Kuhn.
That's right.
So he's the most recent. But certainly the system, first past the post that we have right now, discourages people from participating because they don't see their vote being reflected in the legislature necessarily.
So as you were saying that, I suddenly realized that if we did have a proportional voting system in British Columbia, we would probably right now have either a Liberal Green or NDP Green or maybe NDP Liberal coalition government. Let's say the coalition included you. I mean, and well, that's kind of what we voted for.
You're right. And I think that one of the things that we have to, one of the things that we benefit from having electoral reform in the province, and let's just be clear, I think the BCGreen Party, it's one of our founding principles. So it's not a question about whether or not we would have a referendum after forming government in 2017, let's just say, about whether or not we were going to bring electoral reform to the province of BC. We would do that. The discussion that we would have would be what kind of proportional representation system best suits British Columbians, and it would be a process of informing and establishing a system for us to achieve the best proportional representation system for the people. But I think that what you've highlighted in your question is that proportional representation brings a scenario where there's a less likelihood for a majority government. And majority governments operate like they have 100% of the vote of British Columbians when in fact they don't. And governments need to represent people whether they voted for them or not. And that is not the system that we have in this province right now. It's not the system that we have federally either. And so electoral reform would ensure that whatever mix, and you highlighted the various mixes that could have occurred, no matter what that mix is, we would have to negotiate, we would have to work together, we would have to collaborate on issues, and it would encourage a different kind of dialogue than I think the partisan banter that we've had back and forth in this province would change significantly.
I do think that if we had, let's say, a Liberal-Green coalition government right now, just to choose one of the many options, that this would be a better province than we have under a Christy Clark dictatorship. So, yeah, that's the importance of it.
Well, there would be certainly things that they would not be able to just do. I mean, there would be lots of conversations that would revolve around, especially if they needed Green support. You know, if either of the parties needed Green support to move their agendas forward, then we could ensure that, say, something like electoral reform, as an example, or participatory democracy, would be a condition, as an example of other things that they would like to do.
Okay, so let's take just a broad scenario of LNG, Site C, and the pipelines. Now, we all kind of know where we're going with that. Ms. Clark is all in favor of LNG. Let's take that one. What's the Green position on LNG?
Well, look, I think Andrew Weaver has done an amazing job in the BC legislature, and in fact, even before he was elected, in highlighting, and you know, he's been a real leader for British Columbians on this file as the Christy Clark government in heading into the 2013 election put all the eggs in the LNG basket and said that we are going to create this new industry out of nothing, which is an incredibly difficult thing to do. We're, you know, way behind other jurisdictions in the world, and one of the things that Andrew's done very, very well, just purely from an economic standpoint, to say that, look, British Columbia is not going to get the huge windfall that the BC Liberals have predicted and had predicted, 100,000 jobs, $1 trillion hit to the GDP.
Yeah, I seem to remember all that.
Yeah, you know, this message that they brought out, you know, promising us the whole world that LNG was going to bring us. So just on an economic basis alone, we've seen actually that a lot of what Andrew has said historically and that we've stood for
what
hasn't
bothers
panned
me
out.
more about LNG is the environmental side.
Well, there we go.
It seems to be a totally poisonous industry.
So that's right, and so there's the economic discussion, but then there's the environmental discussion around it, which is a really big problem. We have been, you know, hydraulic fracturing in this province for 60 years, but definitely not to the scope and to the scale that the LNG industry. We've not been doing horizontal fracking like they're proposing, and you know, literally hundreds of thousands of wellheads need to be drilled in this province with a tailings pond for each one of them. You know, this toxic concoction of chemicals and water that needs to be then stored, and fences need to be put around it, and you know, scare guns to ensure that birds aren't landing on it because they literally die if they're in there, and the threat to people's drinking water and all sorts of issues that are arising around fracking. There is a tremendous, not even to mention the impact that it will have on climate change in the world. That, you know, there's. I was just in the legislature talking to someone from the insurance industry, talking about climate change, and the insurance industry is really concerned about this and wanting to get more information from my colleague on that. So, you know, I think that I think the environmental aspects of fracking and LNG is very, very troubling. How it gets cooled, how much energy it takes to cool and transport it, and then of course the use of this liquefied natural gas in burning it and putting the hydrocarbons into the
So
air.
I guess the Green Party is looking at transitioning away from that kind of stuff. where
Yeah,
are we going?
Well, this is going. This is a major piece to the work that we're doing right now. We just have appointed our first critic, is a gentleman by the name of Matt Toner. He's an economist and works in the creative industry over in Vancouver, digital media. And I think that it's just one example of another industry. I mean, we're under the bright lights now, right? So another industry that British Columbia can be investing in, and there's literally hundreds of other industries that are much cleaner, the clean tech industry that British Columbia could be investing in that isn't going to push climate change, speed it up.
Plus
that
poison
it's going to be
land and water.
There you go, exactly. So there are lots of industries that we in British Columbia could be focusing on that are not LNG and fossil fuels. And so Matt, I should just say, Matt is joining the party and coming to work with us because he can bring us expertise in that matter, in that area, and will be helping us develop a platform, a very strong economic platform that can highlight all of the other opportunities that will give British Columbians good, clean, long-lasting, multi-generational jobs.
How about transportation?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it seems like where we should be going towards is trams, and like they have in Europe. All European cities have them, and yet there seems to be such a complete roadblock here. In Vancouver, they've built SkyTrain,
yeah,
which is a good people mover, but just the noise aspect of it, like anybody who lives around SkyTrain, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why how they dare to do that to people. And plus, SkyTrain is expensive. If you put tracks on the ground, it's a lot cheaper. You can build 5 to 10 times as much. I mean, that's my take on things. So, but in general, what's the Green Party's transportation policy?
Well, look, transportation is a critical part of building and developing communities, and I think that's what's happened. I come from municipal government, and what I see a lot is the pressure to develop, and municipalities do that because they need to. The argument is that they need to increase their property taxes to pay for the replacement of all the infrastructure that we haven't been responsible for in the past, and setting money aside to replace. And so we're chasing the replacement of this aging infrastructure with growth. And I think that what's being missed out in that discussion is that when you are developing communities and when you're developing neighborhoods, that you have to be able to have the money set aside to invest in transportation, to connect those communities with one another. And it's a part of responsible growth, and it's a part of responsible community development, is to ensure that there's vibrant transportation networks and options for people, so that they don't need to be single occupant vehicles driving around all over the place as we go. So in terms of what's going on in downtown Vancouver with the transit referendum, they're not asking transit questions about bridges that they want to build and other pieces of infrastructure. And this is the government is elected to make decisions, and they should be making decisions on transit, and it's an incredibly important part. And
so you're saying the referendum is.
Well,
exactly.
It's a problem.
Exactly.
Our governments need to be making commitments to investing in transportation options for people. That is not just bigger, wider roads. We know that doesn't work. And so, like you're talking about, light rail, even underground subways, which are as expensive as above ground, like we've seen with the system over in Vancouver. So, but I think that we need to be diversifying our transportation networks and giving people options. Biking, creating communities that can be walkable so that people can live, work, and play in the same neighborhood, and then connecting centers with light rail and rail options.
And when you say we have to be, it's like we should have been, because we're already like 20, 30, 40 years behind the 8 ball. I mean, to me, the need for change is instantaneous. Maybe I'm wrong, but what do you think? I mean, can we dilly-dally for the next 5 or 10 years? Because with the oncoming environmental disasters, of which they seem to be coming aplenty, we seem to be in trouble.
So there is a sense of trouble. I just want to temper that with the fact that we are in one of the most privileged places in the world, and there are an awful lot of places that are in a lot worse shape than we are. And I think that there has been in this province a lot of fear-mongering in the political circles that the world is coming to an end, there is a lot of trouble, and we have got to address that trouble. And I think that the desire to move very, very quickly scares people away from actually making the decisions that need to be made. And I think that as a responsible government, we need to introduce these ideas to people and say, here are the options. Help us arrive and find the solutions to the problems that are facing us. And so for me, I think that there is a need for us to change away from being a fossil fuel powered economy and society, to be kinder to the environment, to recognize that it does the environment and the ecosystems around us produce and provide the natural resources that we need and that we use, that we need to live. But that the changing is more of a transition than, especially, there's lots of fear that if the Green Party gets elected tomorrow, then the whole world will be turned upside down, and that's not the case. The way that we need to approach this is to say, look, identify what those problems are, and then get together, working together, back to the electoral reform and the participatory democracy. Make sure that all three parties in that legislature are working together towards solving the problems that are in front of us. So,
Adam, I know you wanted to talk a bit about pipelines, so maybe we can finish off with that.
Well, I'm an intervener in the Kinder Morgan Trans Mountain pipeline application, and I cannot believe that how this process has unfolded. The National Energy Board process has been has made me it's made me sad, it's made me angry, it's made me frustrated, a whole host of emotions, and all of those emotions haven't necessarily got a different result, but I can say that that it has been an awful process to be a part of. As Andrew Weaver pointed out in a blog post, the National Energy Board has found in favor of the company 97 or 98% of the time, which means that only 2% of the time have the interveners actually been able to get the kind of answers and things that they need from the company. And I would say that the people in this area need to be very, very concerned, and we need to be able to compel Trans Mountain and the National Energy Board to answer the very serious questions that we have around the safety of the pipeline, and in this area, in the Capital Regional District, the safety of transporting diluted bitumen through our waters. They have very, very clearly not been able to answer what happens when diluted bitumen goes into the ocean. And I think that should just be a very baseline prerequisite, that if you're going to transport diluted bitumen by tanker, that you know and have an understanding and are able to clean it up if there's a disaster. And it's not really a question of if there's going to be a disaster, but when, right? So,
Adam Olsen, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for watching Citizens Forum this week.